What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show today. Got an awesome episode for you. Um, we're going to talk about micro cheating. And for those of you that don't know what that is, basically, you can think of it as what little things do you do throughout your day that you maybe wouldn't do if your partner was kind of looking over your shoulder? That could be little things like maybe having inappropriate conversations about your partner, about personal information with somebody of the opposite sex. It could be following inappropriate social media accounts, liking certain pictures, um, maybe exchanging direct messages with said people. And then it could be something like changing the name in your phone of a certain contact of somebody that you want to keep in touch with, but your partner doesn't want you to be in touch with. All of that stuff could be considered micro cheating. Of course, it's not like you're not physically crossing the line, but at the same time, you potentially might be crossing emotional lines. So, we're going to talk about why this happens and maybe how to go about how to fix it. And it's my belief that all this is caused by really what's at the root is unmet needs. We have needs, whether that be physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual, you know, food needs, sleep needs, all those types of needs. But more specifically, needs that our partners, we look to them to fulfill. And really, I'd say the two main ones, especially in relationship, are physical and emotional. On a physical level, especially after you have kids, could feel like, maybe you're turning into roommates. You got work, you got school, you got cleaning up, all the things. And it's just kind of turned into a monotonous uh, job, if you will. And you're not really making time to connect. And the on the emotional aspect, this could be something like, you're just not feeling appreciated for all the things that you do. And maybe that unappreciation or constant criticism turns into potentially resentment. And what's like stopping a lot of people from this is conflict, right? It's the thing that we all love to avoid. Um, And when you avoid conflict, usually all you do is breed resentment. And, resentment causes you to avoid conflict more because typically conflict turns out to be a negative experience for both you and your partner. So you guys just eventually, slowly just stop talking to each other about the hard, difficult things because, you already know how it's going to go. I don't know if any of you out there, you have a concern, you have a desire, you have a need, and then you kind of play out how that conversation is going to go in your head. And you more or less just talk yourself out of it. And you don't even give your partner a chance to potentially respond in a different way. And in some cases, for a really good reason, because a lot of times, it's like, quote unquote, we know how this story is going to end already. So we avoid the discomfort of conflict. And unfortunately, what also comes as a sacrifice is usually our needs. Um, as smart as it is to avoid conflict and the discomfort of that, we are unfortunately less with the discomfort of unmet needs. And that is not good either. Because, like I already said, um, avoiding conflict usually breeds resentment. And guess what? Resentment is like a cancer in relationships. And over the long term, especially if you're married, it just erodes, what is the feel good feelings that you have towards your partner. And you have to start to develop this thing that the Gottman Institute calls negative sentiment override, which just basically turns you into a pessimist and you assume the worst in your partner. And that's not what we want, right? So, how then do we begin to fix this problem? Well, number one is you got to be honest with yourself, right? It's like, where in your life are you doing this and maybe making it okay, right? So that hard look in the mirror, it's like, am I doing this? Where am I doing this? And then look at yourself in that same breath and say, okay, what are my needs, right? What needs aren't being met that I need to address with my partner? And if you don't know what your needs are, which is a common thing, start with what you blame your partner for, right? Give you full permission to blame your partner. And usually, what's underneath blame is just unmet needs, right? And once you start being able to uncover those things, let's say, then we can start to make progress, right? Then what we do is we start practicing all the things that we've learned from previous episodes on this podcast with regards to nervous system regulation. um, going back to episode 3 and just understanding the, self-control 101. Because what happens a lot of times when we go to get our needs met, we get dysregulated, right? Our nervous system is like, oh shit, we're going to have conflict. Send the alarm, right? Send us into yellow, send us into that fight or flight. And what happens is we start getting this bias to basically look for any potential negativity, rejection, letdown, etc. And when we lead with that, a lot of times it's like we manifest in a way our worst fears, right? Because we don't really leave the door open for um, potential for a different outcome because we're kind of assuming the worst. And our partner's going to be able to pick up on that because a lot of times we communicate that with a lot of nonverbal cues, body language, tone of voice, facial expression, etc. And in order to have successful conflict, what you need to do is be able to maintain a state of regulation, a state of green, a state of ventral. Because when you're able to do that, well, guess what? Again, most of you guys know this, but the smart part of your brain stays online. And we need that smart part of our brain to be able to have difficult conversations, especially around sensitive subjects like unmet needs. A lot of those unmet needs, again, if they're physical, this might be talking about sex. This could be, asking for support, right? Being able to lean in to have deeper conversations, to repair, and have apologies, right? A lot of times resentment builds because there's never really any repair after a rupture. And of course, we avoid conflict. We have open loops of discussions between our partner and us. And that just doesn't end well, right? So, what I would encourage you guys to do is to lean into, again, where in my life do I have unmet needs? If I don't know what my needs are, what do I blame my partner for? What do I blame my friend for? What do I blame my parents for? And start to go on that journey of self discovery so that you can begin to express that to your partner. And when you do not want to criticize them, right? A lot of times you want to lead with regulation, lead with appreciation. If you'd like to have more physical connection, well, guess what? A lot of times, especially for women, that starts with more emotional connection. And if you're avoiding conflict, a lot of times it's hard for women to feel close to their partner if we're always keeping them distant because we can't deal with the hard things, right? And the cool part about it is like when you can stay regulated, right? As Dr. Bruce Perry says, regulate, relate, and then reason. When you can stay in a ventral state during hard conversations, then you can hold space to, hear difficult things from your wife or your girlfriend or your fiance. And what that allows you to do is not be defensive and not collapse if and feel like you're being criticized. And all that does is it starts to create emotional safety and emotional closeness with your significant other because they know no matter how they feel, they can bring things to you, dysregulated or not, upset or not, whatever tone of voice or not, and know that, hey, you know that this isn't about you. and you can be in a position where her words, her feelings don't affect you, right? We don't just shut down and you start developing that emotional closeness. Then all of a sudden the bedroom starts to light back up and physical needs can start being felt to be met more, right? Because that's the age old argument for lots and lots of couples. Not for everybody, but it's like, usually the men have higher libidos, they want more physical connection, sex, etc. And women want more emotional connection. They want to feel loved and heard. They want non-sexual touch, cuddles, being listened to, being validated, etc. And it's not a regenerative cycle where once you're able to stay regulated through these things, you can provide that emotional connection. And, of course, being emotionally connected to yourself enough to be able to have space for her. And then all of a sudden, you give her what she needs, she gives you what you need. And that's what a real relationship is all about. Um, is that, call it regenerative give and take between the two. So, if you would like support for this being regulated, self regulation, if you have difficulty in conflict, if you tend to collapse or shut down, um, I've got you covered. And learning this one skill, learning self regulation and the ability to hang on to yourself, um, and not have it be about you and hold space is a total game changer, especially in long term relationships. So, if you're interested about learning more in that and how I can support you, check out the link in my bio, not my bio, in the notes below. And you can book a call and we can hop on and chat about that. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this podcast, and I'll catch you on the next one.